Hey, award fans, this is Tom O'Neill, the editor and founder of Gold Derby, all about awards. And I'm here with my two colleagues, fellow editors, who'll be joining us throughout the show. Marcus Dixon, our senior editor, and Luca, it's up to you to pronounce your last name, who's beaming in from Europe.
Yeah, Luca Giliberti.
Okay, good. He's one of our most distinguished writers and recent writers. Hey, let's talk, you guys, about this. This is the new Golden Globes. Back in 1982, there was the first scandal with Pia Zadora. That was the last time CBS aired the show. Today, CBS will be airing the show, and you can watch it on Gold Derby. It's going to be live streamed across our front page. But in the interim, in those NBC years, there were frequent scandals. There was the Pia Zadora one in '82, which she won Best Promising Newcomer, and she had a billionaire husband, and there were suspicions that there was something shady behind the scenes. CBS just pulled it off the show, and it wasn't on for 1 year there. That happened once or twice in the 1990s, too, when the voting membership, which was always kept a little below 100 and very exclusive and filled with dubious journalists. The qualification to be a member of the Golden Globes is that you only had to, I don't know what the new standard is, but in the past it was you only had to have 4 freelance articles from the country that you represent. Then there was this last year where there was so many issues, and in 1923, the LA Times ran an article saying, there's nobody black. There's not the racial diversity we think from an international award here. And there were so many other issues, like the fact that the membership would they could submit a bill, I think, for $1,000 plus to attend any Globes meeting. So they constantly had meetings, to get this money. And there were tons and tons and tons of things. There was no show last year. The outcry canceled the show completely. Now, this we're seeing today is the new Golden Globes, new voters, new everything. Marcus, any further details here?
And a new host, Joe Coy. I'm very excited. I didn't really know much about him prior to, when he was announced a month ago, but I've seen him in a few interviews. Ray Richmond, our own Gold Derby colleague, he got to talk to him last week. So I'm really, really excited, especially compared to Gerard Carmichael, who hosted last year. It wasn't the best job that a lot of people thought. Maybe he was too controversial. I feel like Joe is going to do lean into toward comedy and lightheartedness. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, he's a stand-up comic, and that's what he says he's going to do. Luca, what do you think of, for example, the new categories, the new move? We don't know what to expect. They're building walkways into the audience to bring the show closer to the voters and the members of the HFPA and the studios, etc. They're doing a lot of dynamic new things. What's your thought?
Well, obviously one of the new categories is cinematic and box office achievement, which I think reminds all of us of this, best popular film category that almost materialized at the Oscars a few years ago. And I think the majority of us in this field were kind of against that. And it'll be really interesting to see what happens in this category, because again, it's the first time that we're having it. We have no idea what to expect. We don't know if they're going to reward the movie that actually made the most money, or if they're going to reward the movie that somehow had a remarkable achievement, which doesn't necessarily mean that it had to make the most money of these movies. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what they do in that category. And I think in general, as you said at the beginning, this year is incredibly unpredictable because we have this new membership, this expanded membership. Of course, some of the original Hollywood Foreign Press Association members are still in this voting body, but we now are up to 300 members. So we can't even go off of past years necessarily for predicting some of these categories. So that is what will be most interesting to me this year.
But that doesn't stop us at Gold Derby, does it, from making predictions? So let's start talking about this. I want to begin by talking about the movie Oppenheimer, which leads the racetrack odds and the predictions at Gold Derby, as you can see, by a commanding amount of people here. So early on in this Derby, it was Killers of the Flower Moon that was favored, etc. But Oppenheimer was I should say, because it went back and forth between Flowers and Oppenheimer, but both of you guys are picking Oppenheimer, right? Tell me why, Marcus.
Oppenheimer was a juggernaut. It almost got $1 billion at the worldwide box office. That never happens for biopics. And I mean, Killers is a really great movie. I actually preferred Killers over Oppenheimer, but I just can't ignore the ultra success of
But
what
don't you think
Oppenheimer
that?
achieved.
But stay with me, Marcus. Don't you think Christopher Nolan is a slam dunk to win director? Right? Maybe they'll go
I think so.
Scorsese's route, but they usually do split the baby right back and forth, picture and director split, unlike the Oscars usually. So we know that this is Christopher Nolan's year. However, Oppenheimer does lead with the. I think it's at the second most nominations. Right? It's got. I don't have my glasses on, but
Yeah,
anyway.
Barbie has 9, and Oppenheimer's right behind it with 8.
Right. So Luca, do they want to make a serious statement here? Are they going to divide the awards up again? So like every studio is rewarded, or how is this going to play out? What do you think?
That's a very interesting question, and that's one of the things we're going to have to see what this new voting body really does. But something that I would point out is that even in the past few years, Best Drama Film and Best Director have gone hand in hand. So last year we had The Fabelmans win Film and Director. The year before that, it was Power of the Dog that won Film and Director. The year before that, it was Nomadland. So even though sometimes we do see them, split that and give it to 2 different films, they do overlap quite often. And I think Marcus kind of hit the nail on the head. It's just, one half of the biggest movie event of the year, Barbenheimer, of course. And I could see them going with Killers of the Flower Moon. It is an incredibly acclaimed movie. It's been doing very well with the critics groups. It won the New York Film Critics Circle, the top prize, obviously. And I feel like in the past few years, we've kind of seen the Golden Globes become a bit more highbrow and kind of overlap with critics a bit more. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Killers pull it out here, but I'm just going to stick with Oppenheimer for all the obvious reasons.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Oppenheimer too, but I'm very leery of Killers, the Flower Moon, because it tells us a story we didn't quite realize or accepted the guilt for. Killers, that is. It also has that wonderful word "flowers" in it, and I'm sorry to even bring that up as an issue, but when you're looking at your ballot, we've made studies of this at Gold Derby where. Like a Beautiful Mind winning, whenever these aspirational, pretty words show up in titles, don't discount that factor. But let's talk about all season long. Remember, Oppenheimer opened early this season, and all season long we had it out front, as I did. And we had Cillian Murphy, its star, up front. And we spoke to him recently. If we could defer now to that clip, let's take a look.
We all knew we had a great movie, but you can never tell. But it feels wonderful. Chris presents his films in a very particular way. They are made for theaters. They are made for IMAX theaters. And it seemed like people responded to the movie and to the presentation. And yeah, we're really thrilled. People went many times as well. People tell me that, they've gone 4 or 5 times to see the movie, which is really special.
It's also a time commitment. All these movies are 3 hours this year.
Right.
It's true.
But let's talk about some of the competition here now. Well, you can see on the odds for Best Drama Actor up here, Cillian has dropped to the 2nd place. Am I looking at this right? But we've got Bradley Cooper out front. The Globes love stars, Marcus, don't they? The superstars?
Yes, and I'm looking at the odds right now on the screen, and even though Bradley is number 1 with the best odds, more people are predicting Cillian. It looks like 1,500 or so are predicting Bradley, 2,000 are predicting Cillian, and that's because Bradley has more support from the experts and the editors, and that's why he's out front there. But Bradley, and we were just looking at his history, he's never won a Golden Globe. He's been nominated 4 times before tonight, and he has 2 tonight for actor and for director. And I think we all agree that director's probably going to Nolan. So if they finally want to give Bradley Cooper a Golden Globe, it will be an actor.
Luke, isn't poor Bradley's heartbroken year after year after year? I mean, he comes up there with A Star Is Born, what was the American military movie he had before that?
American Sniper.
American Sniper, yeah.
Thank you. And then you can go back to Silver Linings Playbook. And he said such a distinguished career. At now, he's expanding as this multi-hyphenate with directing and writing and producing and starring. And I remind everybody, if you go back and look at that year of Reds, when it had 1 billion nominations and half of them were for Warren Beatty, it got beat by Chariots of Fire at the Oscars. But it's interesting to think what they will do, what kind of statement they'll make. And if we see, as we often see at popular award votes, things like the Oscars and the Emmys, where thousands and 20,000 people are voting at the Emmys, for example. About 10,000 now are now voting for the Oscars. Where here we have a couple hundred now, up to 300, as Lucas said, voting for the Globes. And often, like the year when Shape of Water won at the Oscars, which was kind of and at the Globe, or no, excuse me, it didn't win the Globes, but it was kind of this artsy movie, of course. But what won at the Globes? My favorite, Three Billboards. And we knew it would. I had heard lots of whispers in the industry that was going to take it. And so then a lot of us bet on it at the Oscars, and Marcus explained to us there has been a very strong connection historically from who wins the Oscar to who wins, the Globe, to who wins the Oscar next.
Right, and you've said years and years and years that the Golden Globe is almost like a trial run for how well the person will do in their speech, and if they give a really great speech, Oscar voters are watching the Golden Globes. They're not voters for the Golden Globes, but if they're really impressed by someone that they see on the Golden Globe stage, then it can only help you. And we have a fun comment from James, and he says that he thinks Christopher Nolan is locked unless they want to go crazy with Barbie and give it to Gerwig for director.
Yes, that could happen. And I'm glad that Barbie is really underestimated, I think, by everybody, including our but before we switch over to comedy picture, let's switch over to the category for best film drama actress. And what do our odds say there? I forget, actually. We've got them in front of us here. We have Lily Gladstone out front. Now let's first, if we can, we have an interview with Lily. If we could play that and just get to know her a bit.
I was just doing backflips when I read that scene because I was like, this has all the layers. I can put it all in this one scene. And we did want to reference this moment in The Heiress, William Wyler's The Heiress, where Olivia de Havilland is about ready to open the door, maybe to Montgomery Clift. The audience, right up until the end, believes that her love for him will cause her to open the door and let him back into her life, but instead she locks it and goes up the stairs. So that was that last moment, what we wanted to suspend. We wanted to recreate that suspense. I always knew she was going to lock the door. I always knew Molly was going to get up and leave.
What they're referring to, of course, is if you've seen the Ingrid Bergman, Charles Boyer movie, The Heiress, she won Best Actress for that. And it's a story. Spoiler alert, she actually kind of spoiled it there for you, which is, can a woman who so deeply loves her husband trust him? And this movie is back and forth between her point of view, where she's trying to understand whether Leo DiCaprio is truly in love with her as this husband, or is he indifferent, or is he a spy from the other side? And the movie is powerfully seen through her eyes. She doesn't speak often. She's in almost every scene, but there was an assumption, Luca, let's go to you on this. There was an assumption that Lily was going to go supporting early this award season, and she'd sweep the boards, and everybody said she's a lock. And none of us even seriously considered her for lead actress. And then her campaign came out and said, oh no, she's going lead. And there was a lot of criticism across the board, but she's our Oscar frontrunner at the odds and predictors at Gold Derby, and she's our frontrunner for today. and explain who she plays and why we think she's going to pull this off.
Well, actually, I haven't seen Killers of the Flower Moon yet because of where I live, and I haven't been able to see it yet. But as for why she is most likely going to win, or why she is the odds-on favorite, I mean, she's swept all the awards up until now, the ones that we've gotten, so the Critics Awards. And that's kind of what we're going off of right now. That's the only thing we can kind of go off of. She's won so many of the important ones, and I think she has all the momentum at this point. And we also have to mention, you know, most of us are not really predicting Killers of the Flower Moon in a lot of other categories, and this might be the perfect place to reward it because it does have a lot of nominations. So there's a very good chance that they will want to reward it somewhere. If this were the old Golden Globes, if we were talking about the Hollywood Foreign Press Association here, I would honestly flirt with the idea of having Sandra Hüller in #1 for Anatomy of a Fall. She kind of strikes me as that like international pick in the vein of Isabelle Huppert for Elle, who won in 2017. But because the membership is much bigger now and it's going to come down to consensus, I think Lily Gladstone will be able to pull this off.
Okay, let's switch over to Best Comedy Picture. And this is where I think we're going to see a fascinating potential that everyone's underestimating Barbie. So Best Film Comedy. I'm going to scroll down to my own odds so I can read them here on my screen. Or here you got them now. All right, we have Barbie winning. But Poor Things... This is where it really gets fascinating, Marcus. Barbie was so good, and it was such a surprise that it was so good. It was such a shock, a delightful shock, and it's made so much money. And everybody today kind of forgets Barbie, but when an old timer like me, we all grew up with our sisters and friends, and all the girls of America and the world playing with Barbie. So, how do you think that's going to play out? It's Poor Things, which is the artsy comedy, right? And then you've got the big commercial, tongue-in-cheek, triumphant return of Barbie. These are factors we have to think of.
Yeah, the comedy race this year is where all the drama is, because I think we're all in agreement Oppenheimer is probably going to win drama, but it's probably an even split if you look at the experts and the editors, that some are picking Barbie, some are picking Poor Things. Personally, I think, since it's just what you said, Poor Things is the more artsy one, and I think that will push it over the edge. And the fact that the voters know, hey, we have a special box office category this year. We're going to give that to Barbie. We're going to spread the wealth. We're going to give Poor Things this other award so that they both win something. And also, I don't know if we're going to talk about supporting actor in this chat, but I do have Ryan Gosling winning supporting actor. So I think that's a real possibility. It's, Barbie is not just about Barbie. Ken's in it too.
Luca, but Margot Robbie is just in second place at our odds for Best Film Comedy Musical Actress. We've got Emma Stone here. This is an Oscar darling. This is a woman, a very prestige actress playing a very comedic part, but that's got all kinds of profound undertones, absurdist undertones, but deep ones too. But why is Margot in second place? Just because she won recently, or is it because this is fascinating. Again, normally we would say, Margot's got this as a lock at the Globes anyway, but we don't know the Globes this year. What do you say?
Well, I think it's because Emma Stone's performance is just that acclaimed, that undeniable for people who've seen the movie, people who love the movie. That's what we've been able to gather so far. And, Margot Robbie hasn't actually won a Golden Globe yet, and this is, I believe, her 4th nomination. So she's been nominated quite a few times, and she's obviously in the biggest movie of the year, and she is Barbie. So you would think that she would be out in front, but I think this will also be a good place for them to reward Poor Things, another movie that did incredibly well across the board. It really got every single nomination that it could have possibly gotten. It really maxed out.
It's very competitive it's like a number 2 in every top category, like director and others, I think. And it's a strong contender in the charts to win this category. So we can't But the Globes are often just like the Critics Awards, which are also journalist awards. They've got to make a statement of how smart they are, that they're going to go for something dramatic in the film musical category. But look,
we have a comment from Chris Beecham. He's reminding us, he's our managing editor, that last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once lost this race to the Banshees of Inisherin. So, we all know what happened to Everything Everywhere at the Oscars. So it
was everywhere. We were winning everything. And Banshees was the artistic and foreign-based film that you might assume would normally take it. Thank you, Chris. That's a good reminder.
Yeah.
Let's go to
should we do actor in a comedy?
Yeah. Let's pull those odds up for best comedy musical actor. And while we're doing that, I want to just add this point. Here we go. Okay. This final point about Barbie, and that is it's got lots of music in it. Right before we leave this, stay here on this stuff. But remember, historically, in this category of best film comedy musical, if musicals almost always trumped the non-musicals. So that's a factor to keep in mind on that previous one. In terms of actor, now here we've got, boy, is this interesting. And I meant to say this when we were talking about Best Picture. My favorite film of the year is The Holdovers. And it's got huge critical support. And people feel passionately about it. Often we know, like these Nomadland movies come out of the little tiny movie that looks like it's filmed by a home camera and has huge artistic reach and ambition that ends up sweeping these awards. What has happened in the past is at the Film Critic Awards, they always went with the more artsy movie. The Globes had a commercial bent, and the Oscars would kind of go both ways, right? But the Globes you could often count on also. The new Globes now is filled with more than twice as many members as it had previously. We don't all, know how their award prejudices are, but I think that The Holdovers, I just want to get that word in there, that is really a fine film. I highly recommend it. And everybody at the end of the movie is just knocked out of their chairs. And don't we have Paul Giamatti as winning?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Yep.
See? What do you say?
I mean, go ahead, Marcus.
I recently switched to Paul Giamatti. I had Jeffrey Wright forever, but it's what Tom was just saying, that The Holdovers is just such a beloved movie. But then again, American Fiction is beloved as well. And Paul Giamatti has won 2 Globes before, for John Adams and for Barney's Version, a movie no one's even heard of. He won a Golden Globe for that one. But Jeffrey Wright has also won a Globe for Angels in America. So it really is a tough category. This one is not as easy as some of the other categories, but I do have Paul Giamatti winning this one.
Luca?
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Marcus. I think this is a close category. I do think Jeffrey Wright absolutely stands a chance, but I do have Paul Giamatti out in front for all the reasons that you've mentioned. I feel like he's been gaining a lot of momentum as of late. He's also in second place, I believe, in terms of Critics Awards, which is maybe unexpected for some people. What's interesting about both American Fiction and The Holdovers is that both, in some kind of way, did underperform a bit. I mean, The Holdovers did not get screenplay, it didn't get director, both of which were expected. American Fiction didn't get screenplay, it didn't get director, didn't get any other acting nomination. It wasn't necessarily predicted for director or any other acting nomination, but it's still, I think, worth noting. So we're kind of dealing with 2 films here that kind of underperformed. And with The Holdovers, we also have Deva and Joy Randolph as the odds-on favorite for supporting actress. So the question is, will it be able to support 2 acting wins when it only has 3 nominations, and when it kind of missed out in some categories? So that's why I'm sort of torn between Giamatti and Wright, but I'm going with Giamatti.
Those are the 2 films, by the way. We're talking about American Fiction here, plus The Holdovers. Remember, American Fiction won Best Picture at the Toronto Film Festival, as Green Day had, and as most of the Oscar winners for Best Pictures, including one, I think, Shape of Water, or no, 3 Billboards won that. But in general, the winner of Best Picture at the Toronto Film Festival goes to the eventual Oscar winner because it has such strong emotional tug. And these two little movies, American Fiction and The Holdovers, at the end of the movie, especially American Fiction, it does this flip at the end that just has you going, what? Huh? What? Oh my God. And the way where it lands, just like The Holdovers, sends such an emotional tug to your heart that is just so powerful that I think these two actors are really in the race, and we've got to take American Fiction seriously too.
Mm-hmm. We have a comment from James. He says people are underestimating Paul Giamatti, and he could win here and he could win the Oscar.
Yes, that is entirely possible, and especially when you've got two solid front runners there at the Oscars for Best Actor with, well, actually three if you count Giamatti, with Cillian Murphy and Bradley Cooper, et cetera. So that's a crowded race. Leo will be nominated up there too, of course. But let's talk about Divine in terms of supporting actress in this remake. She is in The Holdovers, and she plays a cook who is. The premise of the movie is that Giamatti's a teacher there, and there are always a few kids who, at a resident boys' school in this case, that the parents don't want at Christmas. Just leave them there. You look after them. And so these are the holdovers, and there are 5 or 6 hooligans who are somebody's got to look after during Christmas break. And Giamatti gets the job. And where that movie goes and ends is in the most unexpected places. That says a lot about human nature and the redemption of people that we've sized up wrong all along.
Mm-hmm. And to me, supporting actress is a race between subtlety and over-the-top performances. Divine is quite subtle in her movie. Are they going to go with that performance, or are they going to go with Danielle Brooks from The Color Purple? And yes, I know The Color Purple didn't get a picture nomination, which is crazy if you ask me. It's my #1 movie of the year.
Fantastic.
But
first Color Purple got screwed at all the awards at the Oscars.
Everywhere. And Danielle Brooks, though, I mean, how many musical performances have won this specific category? I mean,
very many.
I don't even want to list them because there's too many. So that's why I'm kind of leaning toward Danielle, even though the odds on favorite is Divine.
Also, Danielle has such defiance in her performance, and they love that. But, let's wrap up here. The thing you have to take into account, as we know, as professional awardologists, is the rooting factor. Yeah. And that's why Green Day won, and that's why Shape of Water won, and that's why Chariots of Fire beats Red, and that it's literally a race. And that's why Green Day pulled off a win over Roma, right, which was just considered a lock. But boy, we have some movies here, like those two in particular, that really tug at your heartstrings. And the emotional impact at the finale of a movie. Who wants to take this? Luca first and Marcus next, and then let's exit out. Tell me where you think emotion, personal, selfish emotion of a voter figures into these races.
Luca, I mean, if it was me, The Color Purple for me is the most emotional movie I saw all year. Granted, I saw it with Oprah and Fantasia and the whole cast, so maybe that colored my mind a little bit. But I mean, Danielle is the one for me.
Luca, you're getting the last word, and then we're going to switch to 2 new guests.
Oh, I think it's difficult because I think you could make that argument for The Color Purple. I think you could make it for The Holdovers. I think for me, I found Divine's performance incredibly moving. I found that character incredibly moving. So I'd probably go with The Holdovers and with her performance. But honestly, you could say that about Danielle Brooks in The Color Purple. You can even say it about Naiad. Jodie Foster is also someone who shouldn't be underestimated. She won, not long ago for The Mauritanian, which was a complete surprise. Obviously, again, that's the old Golden Globes, but that also has a very uplifting ending. So I think that applies for several movies in this category.
Okay, well, thank you both. Good luck on your predictions and your scores at Gold Derby. I think our prediction center is still open to everyone who's watching. You can go in there and Try to beat the experts.
I'm not making any final last minute changes because those always screw me. So what I have now is it for me.
Do you
Same.
know I haven't made predictions? I was so busy doing this, and now I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get shut out of my own thing.
That means we'll all beat you.
Yes,
exactly.
and literally everyone will beat me. I was just
Every single one.
How stupid of me, right? All right. Well, thank you very much, you guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
You too. Now we are going to oh no, I've lost control of my screen. Who do we have here? Oh, good. We have Tony Ruiz and we have Sue Pennington, both of which are excellent writers and heavy contributors to Gold Derby. And Susan, it's good to see you here.
Thank you.
She does a lot of galleries, by the way, for us here. And we wanted to bring her into the conversation. Size up the best drama picture director and actor races for us. Is there one? Are you on this Oppenheimer train or not?
There's so many good ones this year. I saw Chris actually not too long ago, and we were talking about that this is just such a great year for film. And I love Oppenheimer, and I think it's going to get a lot of awards, and deservedly so. It is a great, great film. I also love Killers of the Flower Moon. But I think Oppenheimer is going to have the edge. It's just got everything. It's got the history. It's got the drama. It was such a well-made film. It's my pick to win. And Christopher Nolan, I think, will get director.
Yeah, I think that's Tony. Do you agree or what?
Oh, completely. I think that that Oppenheimer, this is the beginning kind of their televised kind of streak that's going to go all the way to the Oscars. I am with you, Tom. This doesn't happen as often where you and I are in complete agreement about the best film of the year, but I agree with you. The Holdovers is my #1 film of the year, and I can't wait to watch Divine Joy Randolph kind of sweep. She's done what very few have done in terms of sweeping critics awards. And I think it's going to continue all the way to the Oscars. But yeah, as far as picture and drama and director, I think Oppenheimer has this. I think best actor, drama actor, is going to be a very interesting category to see if they go with Cillian Murphy or whether this is the beginning of a Bradley Cooper sweep.
I know. Let's mention, by the way, jumping back a second to why the Divine sweep is happening in supporting actress, and that is, and this goes back to the emotion thing I was mentioning a minute ago, and I think it's a huge factor in Lily Gladstone's favor, and why she's now succeeding so well and so strongly in lead, and that is, we're talking about the rooting factor, we're talking about emotion. Killers of the Flower Moon and Lily Gladstone, she doesn't have that much dialogue, but she's in almost every scene, and you see the movie through her eyes. And the final scene that she was talking about there, and we've been talking about here, the final scene of Killers of the Flower Moon is what she'll do after all this drama you've just seen, and these loves and betrayals, and her forgiveness is profound. The final scene of Divine in supporting just hits you in the gut when she says her line of what name will be given to her sister's baby, and it just lights up the theater if you know her backstory in the film. And when you get to Killers of the Flower Moon and Lily, you're rooting for her. You're rooting for her throughout the movie. There's such a strong emotional, personal thing about her, about you, the viewer, and her, that I think makes the race so dynamic, because you can look at a movie like Monique, like Precious with Monique, and that defiance is what is Tony's talking about with her toughest competitor, Danielle. But there is not that sentiment in Oppenheimer. I mean, we're rooting for him, but he's one guy who's hard to love.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because I think that's going to play somewhat into the actor race. Because I think when you look at a film like Oppenheimer, which is this technical and I think narrative genius of a story, but the guy at the center of it is not necessarily, in some people's view, heroic. Whereas with Maestro and with Bradley Cooper, Bernstein is such an American genius and such a American success story, and so beloved, that I think that's where I think there's a hug factor in terms of who voters are going to reward here.
Let's line up the clip chat we had with Paul Giamatti, and we'll show that in a minute. This is the guy who plays, life's ultimate loser, and he's got these rascal kids he's got to look over after Christmas, and you can imagine they're rebelling against him, and he's outsmarting them because he knows what these hooligans are going to do anyway. But then the movie flip-flops, and all kinds of surprises come out. So you're rooting for him too, aren't you? But so let's take a look at our chat with Paul Giamatti.
So charismatic and poised, and he's one of those guys. I mean, like I say, I saw his audition, and it was a little rough. He just needed a little push that Alexander gave him, and it was fine. But it was more. There was a portion of his audition tape which was just him sitting there, and the casting agent was talking to him, and I was like, he's one of these people. He doesn't need to do anything. His face is so interesting to look at, and his face feels very period, too. And it felt.
Yeah, you're right. It kind of
looks like it, and I was like. He looks like he's from the 70s. He looks like he's from a 70s movie, too. And it was like the whole thing just made sense. And it felt like a very 70s thing to put the kid who's never done anything in the movie. It felt very kind of 70s. And like, let's just do it. Let's just put that kid in the movie. And it was so it all felt right.
I'm a kid of the 70s. And I know what he's talking about. Sue, do you have any thoughts on all of this?
Well, I unfortunately have not had a chance to see the Holdovers yet. Where I live, it was here for 1 week, and I did not get a chance to go see it. Yeah, I am looking forward to catching it on Peacock. I love Giamatti, and to me, he's great in everything that he does. And I think they like him at the Golden Globes, so I can see where he could very definitely win this. But I am hearing a lot of good stuff about Jeffrey Wright too. So I do think that's going to be a close race between the two of them from everything. I think they're both popular picks right now.
They are, and they both have these triumphant finales. And
they're kind of character actors that you see in a lot of things.
Actors,
and they're always good in they're just so good in what they do.
Are we underestimating who are we talking about here? Oh, Giamatti, Tony, because at the end of his movie, there's a real big surprise, isn't there? And
well, what I love is about this. One of the things that seems to be embedded in the narrative behind Giamatti is the fact that he was, in my opinion, very cruelly snubbed at the Oscars for Sideways. That movie got pretty much all the nominations it needed, except for Giamatti, who was kind of the heart and soul of the movie. So I think there's a certain kind of overdue factor with Giamatti. But I do think that if there is a spoiler in the race, you got the two people out front, Cillian Murphy and Bradley Cooper, who are playing both these real life people. That kind of biopic thing could open up a space for what many see as an overdue veteran in Giamatti, and it would make me happy.
And let's talk about Jeffrey Wright. He has such a strong theater background. I mean, he's the long-standing. I mean, his Tony Awards history is Broadway history, the actor stuff is so established, and his finale actually is the most triumphant of them all. Not for him, but for everybody else. I guess in a way for him, but it's one of these surprise things that just flies at you in the face, and that's what causes everybody to jump up out of their seats at the end of the movie, like they do at Green Day and a lot of the movies that end up winning. And you don't see it coming, but as I was at a screening of journalists and industry people and saw that movie, I witnessed what happened at the Toronto Film Festival, where there was just this leaping out of the seats at the end going, wow, and a cluster of people in the lobby outside the screening just going, oh my, it was as if you could take the whole movie as one element and the finale as another, and the finale has the impact that really touches your heart in so many ways. Anyway, we're talking too much about all that stuff. Let's go to where haven't we gone yet?
Supporting actor we haven't really talked about.
Okay, give me let's look at our odds for best supporting actor in a film. And this is where we've made a presumption for so long that Robert Downey Jr. is going to take this. And now we have what do we have in our odds here? We've got Robert Downey Jr. out front, but Ryan Gosling has to be. I know it's a silly role he's got in Barbie, and it's goofy and it's all of that, but it's heroic that he even took on the part, right? And now we've got. Go through the list here for me, Tony. I'm having trouble reading it on my screen.
Yeah, right now Gold Derby's odds have Robert Downey Jr. out front. I'm predicting Robert Downey Jr. I think this could be the beginning of a lot of good things for him on the way to the Oscars. You know, he's this kind of respected. You know, this is his. If he does get nominated at the Oscars, which I think we all think he will, it would be his third career nomination. But he hasn't been nominated in about 16 years since Tropic Thunder. And he was originally nominated in the 90s for Chaplin. And he is, I think people forget with all the Marvel stuff, what a great actor he is. And this film kind of reminds everybody of, yes, this is a great actor. And so I think that helps him. Whereas Ryan Gosling moving up, I think that could actually happen. I am not confident in picking Robert Downey Jr. Gosling is my favorite part of the Barbie movie. And he went viral just before Christmas with the new kind of Christmas version of I Am Ken. And I think that that's a place where they could reward this film with an acting win. I think he's more likely to get an acting win than Margot Robbie. But I also think that there's room for Charles Melton and for Mark Ruffalo. Ruffalo, you know, is giving a performance like he's never given before.
Oh, I know. We can't underestimate that at all.
So yeah, this race is not solidified behind any one person just yet.
What do you think, Sue?
I agree 100%. And it's when you look at the four top people anyway, how do you even compare those four performances? I mean, they're so different and in kind of different genres of film, and they're so different from each other. It's like comparing apples and oranges. And I think if I were voting on this, who would I pick? Because I do think that they were all really, really good. I've been a huge fan of Robert Downey Jr. since I can't even remember how far back, because I just have always loved him. And I agree that I think because of the Marvel films that he's kind of been underestimated, and he did such a fantastic job in this film. But who else could have played Ken the way that Ryan Gosling got away with playing Ken? You know, I mean, and he usually likes such serious roles. I was so surprised when I heard that he took this role, and he just blew it out of the water. And then you've got Charles Melton, who I watched on Riverdale, and I did watch this film, and he held his own against some fine actresses. So I do think he cannot be underestimated. And Mark Ruffalo, again,
I know. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah,
'Cause
another Marvel.
it's almost a lead role in the supporting race, and
Right.
he plays this really villainous character who turns out to be quite comedic. And
Right.
Emma Stone turns everything upside down for him, and he keeps coming. Even though you think he's going to be a minor character early in the movie, he turns out to be a substantial one in many ways. Talk about Mark Ruffalo, one of you guys, who I think he's a real surprise in that movie. It's a big performance.
Yeah, it's a big performance in a role that we've never really seen him do. He's playing kind of this.
Role, right?
It's a villainous role, but there's this cad. There's this almost kind of like if Clark Gable was a villain, sort of image to it have. You almost imagine him twirling the mustache, and it's such a Lanthimos. It's such a Yorgos Lanthimos type of performance. But it kind of shows this side of Mark Ruffalo that we've never seen. We've seen him in previous films, like in Spotlight, where he's kind of like the virtuous, justice-seeking person. But here he's just such a cad. But I think it's really interesting that, and Chris Beecham points this out in the comments, that we've got kind of a Hulk versus Iron Man, and and in the films, it was kind of an even. In the Marvel films, they were kind of an even match. Although I do believe Iron Man did beat the Hulk at one point in those, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, there could be a whole lot of goodwill around Mark Ruffalo win. I think this race is a lot more open than a lot of people think.
Do you know what Jamie Foxx said after he won the Oscar? And let me throw back to earlier part of the show in this conversation. It was when Jamie Foxx accepted his Golden Globe. And this is where we're talking about the Golden Globes are an audition for the Oscars. If you remember his acceptance speech, it was very similar to the one he gave at the Oscars. His Globes one was actually performed better. And he brought us into his childhood and the grandmother who raised him. And it was such a perfect acceptance speech for Ray. And then at the end of it, he holds up the globe to his grandmother in heaven and as if passing it to her. My God, the audience was just bowled over. He had the Oscar in the bag. It was like the year Hilary Swank was talking about I was, Ray, I don't know what I'm doing up here. I'm just a girl from a trailer park. And she talks about moving to LA with her mother and living in a car and all these things. So the Globe really matters here. And what I think, to go back to Jamie Foxx for a second, he said the biggest regret of his career was that when he won for Ray, that he then wasn't getting the serious roles anymore. He was box office, right? In the case of Robert Downey Jr., he had this bad boy young career. He reformed. He had tough time getting back into the movies, as I recall. He had to actually pay for the film's insurance for Gothica to get back into a movie with Halle Berry that ended up being a bomb. But you have to get insurance if you want to perform in films or film to go on. And given his early reputation, they were dubious. But he really straightened up. He paid the bill and he bought his way back into Hollywood. But now we see him making the statement loud and clear about we have these kind of Marvel popcorn pictures in here and performances. Can he go back? Can Robert Downey Jr. now be considered a serious actor? Is there a divide between that? Have they now said, oh, he's crossed over, he's no longer part of the artiste crowd?
Yeah, that's such an interesting idea. I think Hollywood loves a narrative, and what better narrative than a guy who had a lot of trouble, was an Oscar nominated actor, goes off, gets his head right, comes back, earns a gazillion dollars, can buy us and sell us left, right, and sideways for the rest of his life from the Marvel movies, and then decides to really do this really great character work. And the role of Louis Strauss in Oppenheimer is as much a character performance. I mean, Downey is almost unrecognizable in this film.
I know. I didn't realize it was him at first.
And I think that kind of narrative, supporting actor oftentimes can have this kind of like career narrative to it. This kind of Jack Palance, right? The Veteran Achievement Award. And what better person to reward than a guy who has the chops, but has also made Hollywood a lot of money.
And I think he's well liked.
Yes,
he's well liked among his peers. And I think that, which I know that's not who's voting for him here, but I do think that he has a good image now, and that helps.
Let's jump over to the TV categories for a minute here. Could you put up the odds for best comedy musical TV series? Let's talk about the top 2 series races in the time we have left here. And this is fascinating now. And this has to do with the calendar. And I mean, for example, to use a film equivalent, Oppenheimer opened very early. Killers opened up late. As a matter of fact, I think it's showing, it's now on Netflix, I believe. But it's there's a timing factor here. And it may be a case of where that could help. Oh my God, see, I'm so old, I'm blind, and I don't have my list in front of me here. Pardon me for leaning into this here. So, all right, so comedy thing here. So we had this assumption about Ted Lasso. It swept the Emmys 2 years in a row for best comedy series. Here we have it rated only down in 4th, but I'm not so sure that that's going to happen at the Emmys, which are next week, by the way, because it got delayed and delayed and delayed because of these strikes. When they were voting on it in August of last year, I think I think Ted has a strong advantage at the Emmys because they counted the votes then. But here they're voting at the Globes last week. So The Bear was always the critic's choice, the critic's darling, and it's that TV show that we all should be watching if you're not. It takes creative chance after creative chance. It's very daring, and it's held on there. So, and Jury Duty was a delightful surprise on Amazon's part. I didn't realize that it was a series at first. I just thought this was a TV movie they had, and as a parody of reality TV shows. But boy, it's very entertaining, and we can't underestimate that. And I think that Murders in the Building, it just did something amazing last week where they ran 3 episodes in a row on broadcast TV. And I think that show has got such a superstar cast, such huge ratings, and a duration and a buildup of a following. Remember, there were at these award shows, it can take years for you to break in. And that succeeded. And then we have Abbott Elementary, which we all thought a year or 2 ago was going to be a strong awards contender, and it's underperformed. So, Sue, take this with us here. Do you believe the Bear prediction? That's the cool choice right now in Hollywood for sure. But Jury Duty may appeal to a younger crowd, which the Globe is probably not. And then, oh my God, Only Murders in the Building, which
Yeah.
I think could actually pull off an upset here. But I think I'm going with the Bear, but I'm very, very interested in what happens to Only Murders.
Yeah. Well, the Bear, you've got Jeremy Allen White, who is, he seems to be the golden boy right now. And I really like him. I watched Shameless, and I always liked him on that. And he's in Iron Claw now. So I think he's got a lot of recognition, which of course helps the show just stand out. I'm a huge fan of Only Murders in the Building, and I know so many people who love that show. If you love a mystery, and then you've got the generations of people who grew up with Selena Gomez. My 18-year-old daughter likes this show. And then you've got the people who grew up with Steve Martin and Martin Short. And that show to me just appeals to so many people and so many different generations. And I would love it. It has not really won. It keeps getting nominated and doesn't win a lot. And I would just love to see it win.
What say you, Tony? About this race in general.
Well, I have the Bear. I think jury duty is the spoiler. The thing about this, and I think the timing of this is so interesting, the fact that, the Golden Globe tonight is for the Bear season 2, whereas next week's Emmys is for the Bear season 1, which aired all the way back in June of 2022. So the timing of this is just fantastic. I think the Bear is in a really good position, mainly because, over the summer, when the Bear dropped its second season, all discussion was about particularly the episode, the flashback episode, where everybody in Hollywood was in that episode. Sarah Paulson, John Mulaney, Oliver Platt, Bob Odenkirk, and Jamie Lee Curtis, who pretty much stole the entire episode. So I think that the Bear is out front. I'm actually predicting the Bear to win not just this, but I'm also predicting to win both lead acting races.
Yes.
I think it's also possible that Eben Moss-Bachrach could win supporting actor. But supporting actor is a weird category because it combines comedy, drama, and limited series. So it's a little bit more competitive there. But I think the Bear's way out front, and I think Jeremy Allen White is definitely winning.
Let's switch over to drama series, best drama series. And here we have just the presumption that Succession is going to sweep everything. And it may not, it may certainly be true at the Emmys coming up next week. But Sue, don't the Globes love new things, new shows? They like to discover things and tell the world about them, right?
I agree. And The Last of Us is such a good show. And I'm not a video gamer. And my husband is. He's played the game. And we both enjoyed it. And the performances in The Last of Us, it was just very captivating to me. And again, like you say, it's a new series, so I think it's got a good chance to be the spoiler there and come out and win.
I agree.
Yeah, I've got it in second for series, for actor and actress.
Mm-hmm.
With actor, the one place where I think Succession could be vulnerable, I'm still predicting Kieran Culkin, but I think that race is wide open. I could see a case for Pedro Pascal winning. I could see a case for Gary Oldman winning for Slow Horses. I also think Bella Ramsey or Kerry Russell could upset Sarah Snook. I think those categories are going to be really, really competitive, especially since we know The Last of Us was popular. It cleaned up at the Creative Arts last night, won both drama guest acting races there. So I think The Last of Us is in a position to be a spoiler for several of those races.
Yeah, so a lot of people are very passionate about it. What's your favorite TV show of the year, Tony?
The Last of Us actually is my favorite. I didn't even know, Susan, I didn't even know it was a video game when it came on. I found that out after the fact. I had just saw it, and my husband and I kind of just became kind of addicted to it. And I think there hasn't been a better episode of television over the last 12 months than that third episode of The Last of Us, which Nick Offerman won the Emmy for last night. And it took the zombie trope, the back from the dead trope, and did something really compelling and really interesting with it, and in a way that I wasn't expecting.
See, I watched it reluctantly, knowing it was based on a video game.
Oh, okay. So how
my
can you take it
husband and
seriously?
son were talking about it, but I'll watch anything. So I said, "Oh, I'll watch it," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is such a good show." But it's hard for me to pick a favorite show of the year. You talk about Gary Oldman and Slow Horses, and we actually just started the third season the other night, and I love that show. And Gary Oldman is so good in
so
the
good.
show. And sometimes they do pick somebody who's not in the up for best TV show.
Yeah.
But that I can't even describe his character in that show. Unless you watch that show, you just cannot describe his character in that show. And he is just fantastic in there. We have really enjoyed that one this year.
Okay, well, let's say thank you for all of your insights and contributions. This is fun. We have to switch again. We got to get the whole Gold Derby family in here. Thanks to you guys, and we're gonna bring in next Daniel Montgomery and Christopher. Excuse me. Oh, you're just saying thank you. Okay, and let's bring in Daniel and Christopher to set us all straight here. Are we wrong? Are we screwing this up?
It's both. It's probably both.
So take it from there. We're the assumptions we're making now. We know we're going to have to eat crow later. What are the worst predictions we're making here?
Well,
Or
to your last point about Gary Oldman's character in Slow Horses, just imagine a comedic version of his character in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. But I actually am predicting him to win actor in a drama. Just because it reminds me of Kevin Costner last year for Yellowstone, a one no one saw coming, but it's a movie star in a role that, with a show that's increasing in its popularity. Like, it's already had a 5-season renewal in the last 18 months. So it's generating a lot of popular demand. And, but it's interesting with these TV races. And I think objectively, like, a person could just predict Succession, The Bear, and Beef in most of those categories and see if they actually do better than any of us taking like any risks with these shows.
Daniel, we were just talking about Beef here. We have to bring that up. That is a rumbling volcano at all of these award shows, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's interesting. It feels like this juggernaut that keeps going, but we haven't, because the Emmys were delayed, we haven't actually gotten to see that juggernaut get started until now. It did well at the Creative Arts Awards last night, at the Creative Arts Emmys, and it's looking like it's going to do well tonight. I think it's a pretty solid, almost lock for best movie limited series at the Globes. I think at least one, if not both actors will win, although I'm taking a risk saying one of the lead actors from Beef will not win. I think the voters will spread the wealth in the lead actress race. Going out on a limb for Brie Larson there, which we might talk about later. But yeah, I think Beef is just the kind of limited series breakout darling of 2023. So I think
let's put up those odds for best limited series, or best miniseries, if the Globe calls it that. And let's talk about the shows we failed to mention earlier. Beef is way out there. Fargo has won in the past, but of course it was for the first installment of that limited series, and but it has a strong following. And then Daisy Jones and the Six has some support here. But nothing can beat Beef, can it?
No, I don't think so here. It is interesting that most of these shows are, competing in the next Emmy cycle. So we don't actually know, that they're sort of untested on the award scene. But yeah, among them, I don't see any of them winning here, maybe in acting. But here, I think it's going to be all Beef.
I want to switch gears to some of the films that were snubbed. Like, boy, if anybody knows Oscar history, they know about the tragedy of The Color Purple by Spielberg at the Oscars. He wasn't nominated. I mean, the whole thing was just treated so terribly. And now it's not nominated for picture at the Globes, but there's all this love for Fantasia. We interviewed her, and I'd like us to show that now. And they were talking about she is nominated here at the Globes, but The Color Purple has been historically treated very poorly at Hollywood Awards. And this is a remake, remember, a musical remake of the Broadway play, which was a remake of the movie, which was a remake of the Pulitzer Prize winning book. So it's a familiar story, but boy, oh boy, Fantasia is a big surprise. Let's tune in to what she had to tell us.
See these characters, that she is every woman, every man, black, white, young, and old. Somebody can relate to Celie or Sophia, Suge Avery, Mr. Oh Mr. Hoppo. We all can watch this movie and relate. And the thing that I love about it, thank you, Lord, is it ain't just trauma. It's trauma, but so much joy in it.
Yeah.
So much laughter in it. And that's how we get through every day. Life be lifing.
Isn't that wonderful? She's so right. And what's I went in very skeptical to see this Color Purple, but boy, oh boy, I loved it. And Fantasia is a darling. I don't know. Where do you stand on the Color Purple? Is it going to get its redemption in any category? It's just a tragedy what keeps happening to that show.
It's definitely had an up and down trajectory in the last couple weeks. It didn't do well at the BAFTA long list. It's missing a lot of tech guilds, which is kind of surprising to me. PGA, it might have a shot at PGA, but it's also kind of been underperforming at the box office, and that's what PGA usually likes to reward.
Yeah,
its best hope is probably SAG. It's particularly ensemble. It's a very SAG friendly movie. Whether that will be enough is hard to tell at this point.
Let's switch over to the category of limited series best actress and take a look at these contenders there. So this is where we think, the beef star comes in. Size this up for us, Dan. You mentioned the Brie Larson earlier.
Yeah, we've got Ali Wong out front. She, I believe she won the Gotham Award, if I'm not mistaken, for this performance. But, again, because the Emmys were delayed, we haven't seen her up on stage winning a whole lot of things yet. So this could be really the start of a juggernaut. And then you've got Brie Larson. We know the Globes historically, we're not sure with this new voting body what it's going to be like, but they historically have liked big movie stars, A-list movie stars. Brie Larson is an Oscar winner, doing this very showy, triumphant, defiant, as you've said, Tom, is a really strong a selling point for a performance at these awards in Lessons in Chemistry. And it got a limited series nomination, so we know that the Globe voters like it in general. Riley Keough, Daisy Jones and the Six got 3 nominations here, so they like that a lot too. Another thing that the Globes have historically liked is, what we call nowadays Nepo babies. They love second, third generation stars. Riley Keough is, in that Elvis Presley lineage and lost her mother recently, Lisa Marie Presley. And so there's going to be a lot of emotional support behind her, I think, to maybe give her a triumphant moment. And then you've got Juno Temple in Fargo, Rachel Weisz playing twins in Dead Ringers, dual roles.
Yes, I love twins.
Yeah, and Elizabeth Olsen in Love and Death.
Well, all right. I think this is all way too complicated, so I brought my crystal ball here, okay? But every time we talk about things, I'm looking sideways at my crystal ball here, and it's not suddenly singing and piling up. So that's fun for us. But if you're competing at Gold Derby with your own awards and your own predictions, and I think we're still open for another 20 or 30 minutes to make your predictions and see if you can outdo the experts from some of America's leading media like IMDb and IndieWire and Variety and elsewhere. And so that's what Gold Derby does, is we offer you 6 sets of predictions. You've got the experts from leading media who compete with us. You've got the staff of Gold Derby as editors. You can go through our odds and our rankings and our predictions and see that's a separate one. There's one just for our top 24 users. And this is where the viewer here, we're talking with us, is got to really aspire to be in this top 24, because Gold Derby's been around for 20 years. And we've got a history, or it was in 2005 or 6 that we debuted, or no, 2010, I'm sorry, was when we debuted the Prediction Center, where you yourself come in there and your entire history of your voting for 35 awards, and by the way, 35 weekly TV shows, to predict them. This is your chance to get into what we call the top 24. So when you see that as a separate league at Gold Derby, that's the people who had among the top 24 last year who had the best scores when predicting the Globes. So they advance forward to compete against the editors and the experts. And then you've got another league called the Top 24 All-Stars. And that's where we go back, I think, 3 years, where who's got the best score collectively. So if you're wanting, and this is what we all, let's be honest, are trying to find out there, is who we can steal predictions from so that we can be right. We've only had 1 out of 80,000 people predicting the Oscars ever get everything right. I don't know. I haven't gone back and checked, Daniel. I don't think we've ever had 100% of the Globes. Those are impossible to predict, right?
Yeah, the formerly the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, they're so, they've always been so mercurial. It was this very small organization with less than 100 voters. Now there are several hundred voting for these. So it was always hard to kind of pin down exactly what they were going to think. And because they're such a small organization, they can veer in wild directions, as opposed to other groups that tend to go with a consensus choice that a lot of other people have voted for. So you can get really unusual winners at the Globes.
And Luca, what do you think?
Chris,
I mean, sorry.
I know we look the same. It's definitely going to be very interesting, especially tonight. I try to balance between what the HFPA and their voters did in the last few years, and balance that with like them adding another 100 members and an international voting body, and see how that will affect the winners. So I'm trying not to. I have high hopes, but I'm trying not to like overestimate to the point of like over rewarding something that the Globes may have, like the old Globes may have done in the past.
I know. That's the great suspense about tonight. In the past, if you looked back, and this is where it kind of the math is cheating a little bit. You can go back and say, used to be 2 out of 3 of the stars who won Best Actor and Actress at the Globes at the Oscars, previously won the Golden Globe, a month earlier. But remember, the Golden Globes have 2 Best Actor and 2 Best Actress categories with drama and comedy. So you can say, oh, the one who won at the Oscars won one of those 2 awards. So, but still there is a point here, and Chris, I want you to talk about this, that this Golden Globe show, has such strong impact on just completely upending the Derby at this point on the calendar. Every year when we go through this, and the assumptions are thrown out the window, and we feel like fools, and then a complete different series of Oscar narratives take over. You as a prognosticator have to deal with that too. It's kind of fun. It's why we love them so much. And by the way, they're the Critics' Choice do it now, but the Globes for a long time were the only award show that held on to the original format of all these peer group awards in Hollywood, that initiated at banquets where champagne is served and where they just get to be loosey-goosey. The Oscars weren't on radio even until World War II. They started in 1929. They didn't get on film on TV until the 1950s. The Grammys didn't become big on TV until the 1970s. They'd been around since the 1950s. And so the Globes, and then they all got so big they started being shown in auditoriums, and forget the tables and the intimacy of us getting to peek into this Imperial Ballroom at the Beverly Hilton Hotel and see all of these great stars who we consider our best friends in our imaginations because we bond with them inevitably. But there's a strange thing where a movie will break out at the Globes and just carry the day. And what do you, first of all, do you agree with that? And second of all, what is the larger message to take from that?
Well, yeah, I don't think barely anyone was predicting Bohemian Rhapsody until it won at the Globes. So it does have a huge factor. The key factor is that it's televised. Like Oscar voters, none of them are voting for the Globes, but they're watching the winners and the speeches they give and how much of an impact that is throughout the industry. And that's what certainly gets the ball rolling. I think specifically with a lot of these film categories, I think it's, I think a lot of us, there's a consensus on what the front runner may be, but if it's not the front runner, then it's this other person or this other film. So it's a lot of these are like like two-handers with these. So it'll be interesting to see what takes that narrative and how they use that, to campaign for ultimately to the Oscars and the guilds that precede it.
Daniel Warren Beatty once said the famous phrase, the Oscars are business, but the Globes are fun. and what he meant, of course, is that this festive spirit and this point I was making a minute ago about how all the other award shows have segued, just given up on this banquet setting and have gone into auditoriums. Now, the Critics' Choice has gone back to the banquet setting, but at the Globes, this is all stars. They don't bother with any technical categories, and it's just superstar after superstar after superstar after superstar. And there will be tonight more than 1,500 bottles of champagne drunk in a room that fits like 1,200 people, and plus all the wine and all the hard drinks. It used to be in all the old photos of Globe ceremonies, you'd see bottles of gin and whiskey and scotch and vodka and all that. The bottles would actually be in the middle of the table. Now they have waiters discreetly come in and bring all that. But there's so much wine flowing, and so that's what Warren Beatty meant. It's fun. These people are all, I've one time sat in the Globe audience. I probably could request it again, but it was enough to see what happens off screen. I mean, I remember sitting next to the table for 6 feet under when they lost and the cameras went to commercial. They all took off and the seat fillers came in. And it's very frequent that you see stars, as Eddie Murphy allegedly did when storm out of the Oscars when he lost for Sweeney Todd. But the Globes as party, the Globes as fun, that where they let their hair down. Daniel, that's a big part of the fun of the show, isn't it? Remember when Lottie and what's her name were both in the bathroom when they won, and Reese, no, who was the second one? I forget. But then they had to wait for them to come back.
Yeah, I think the informality is part of the appeal. I think the the stars show up because they know it's their first televised opportunity, at a high profile event to kind of get their faces out there for Oscar season, and then when they get there, they can sort of drink away their nerves, and that leads to potentially more irreverent moments, more unexpected moments than we would have necessarily get at a much more formal kind of what considers itself a dignified affair, the Oscars, as opposed to the rascals at the Golden Globes. But yeah, I think that's definitely part of the appeal, certainly from the audience perspective.
Chris, you probably don't know this. I've written I'm sure you know, I've written books for Variety on the history of all these major awards. So I've gone through historically performance, telecast after telecast after telecast, and I've watched this progression of banquet settings where the industry is just, slapping themselves on the back and there's no cameras watching. And go back to the early Grammy year when Henry Mancini swept the Grammy. Now, there was no radio, there was no TV. This was just a bunch of people from, in this case, the Golden Globes, I'm thinking of the Grammys. It had won all these Grammys, and he had won so many. Mancini was, at the end of the show, was carrying them out like this to his car. It was held at the Beverly Hilton, like the Globes are. And he dropped one. And he didn't even bother to pick it up. He was so overwhelmed with all these other, he kicked it to the curb. And I can't find out to this day whether Henry Mancini actually kicked to the curb his Record of the Year Grammy for one of the greatest songs ever written, Moon River. In those days, the Grammy looked like somebody's bowling trophy. It was so poorly made. In the early days of the Globes, actually up until just as recently as 15, 20 years ago, they were just spray painted gold. They didn't bother it was plaster. They just straight. That's how informal it was. And then when you get to this point where they're all pulling the shows from the banquet settings into the auditoriums, for all of the award shows in Hollywood I'm talking about, there are many stories that I came across historically of where another good reason they pulled booze from these shows is the stars would get so drunk that they made fools of themselves. So they had to have strategies at the Emmys, for example. I remember one year Ben Gazzara won, and he was so plowed that they locked him in the green room. And he's in there, and he's pulling out there and banging, and he won, I think. And the host is just trying to get the show moving forward because you've got somebody overserved back in the green room. But the Globes is fun is one of the reasons we love them. Chris, let me ask you, what are you rooting for tonight? TV or film? And among any of those titles, what are you actually a fan of? Like, I would say I'm a fan of the Holdovers. I mean, I'm a fanatic fan of that. What would you say?
TV, definitely Beef and The Bear. Fargo, I think I do agree the actors category is very tough and very crowded. If Ali Wong were to lose, I think Juno Temple has a good shot of winning if you watch that 5th season. Film, I am rooting for Killers of the Flower Moon, and I think Past Lives could win screenplay. I think Hooler could win actress for Anatomy of a Fall. I'm keeping my fingers crossed about that.
We'll talk about her performance.
Well, it is kind of similar to Gladstone. They're both giving very internal performances and with balance it with like one standout explosion emotional scene. But it's very beneath the surface. But you see so many layers of the character she's playing when she is, being held on trial for whether or not she murdered her husband. And you can just see, just through one look, her going through so many emotions of her trying to using her skills to to manipulate the court system and well as look into the relationships with her son and her husband. It's very ambiguous, but you just can't help but root for her. And the fact that she is, the leading lady of the 2 biggest international films nominated at the Globes, with this international voting body, if she were to win, I think that would be a key factor. That would be a key factor that, the Globes this new voting body really has changed or start to recognize the impact and the complexity of performances and
Daniel, pile on here.
Yeah, I think between The Zone of Interest and Anatomy of a Fall, she's giving like performances in, I believe, 3 languages, because she's speaking a lot of English and French in Anatomy of a Fall. So I definitely think that's possible. Reminds me also of Isabelle Huppert winning for Elle at the Globes. When we thought Natalie Portman would win that for Jackie.
I'm sorry, but that I was just talking with a friend the other day that the one thing that gets me mad about awards is that Natalie Portman's Jackie performance was just not rewarded enough. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I definitely think Huller has a strong chance for actress. She's certainly one of the critics' choices. As far as the people I'm personally rooting for, mine right now are the underdogs. Like 2 of the Best Actor nominees, giving completely opposite performances, are 2 of my favorite performances of the year, but they're both kind of underdogs, and that's Barry Keoghan for Saltburn, which is this wicked maniacal role, and Andrew Scott for All of Us Strangers, which is you couldn't ask for a more sympathetic, empathetic, just huggable character. So those are 2 of my favorite performances. If in one of the Spider-Verses, one of them wins the Golden Globe, I'm thrilled.
We have chats with a few of the people that Daniel's just mentioned, but in the remaining minutes of our segment here, let's go to the video chat we had with Sandra Huller, who I agree is vastly underestimated. She's in 2 major movies, and let's hear what we had to say when we sat down to talk with her.
Yes, I like the ambiguity very much. Ambiguity is a word that I discovered just recently, like, I don't know, 2 years ago. I didn't know about that at all, and that life gets really much more rich when you accept that it is that way. And for me, it is that way. There is no clear yes or no most of the time, or black and white, or decisions are right or wrong. There is a certain flow going on, and you just have to, give in and surrender. You can shape, of course, a lot of things with decisions that you make, but so yes, I enjoyed that very much, because I think it is very human to be that way, to feel that way. And I think we tend to put things, of course, into boxes because we think it makes it easier for us, but to be honest, it doesn't.
Oh, what a lovely interview. We have, and also let's Daniel mentioned Adam Scott, whose career keeps climbing gradually up and up and up and up, and to be a more distinguished actor than his early career, where he was known for slapstick comedy. Let's show our interview with Adam Scott.
The sex scenes were, you get nervous about them and you want to get them right. But Andrew was really good. We had an intimacy coordinator, and everybody felt very safe in relation to what we wanted to do, and we sort of mapped it out in some loose fashion. But Andrew was really good about sort of not being too reverent about that actually there was still some sort of sex is just communication, it's just physical communication. And so it was not to be too precious about it, and we still had to offer up in the same way I had to offer up myself emotionally. I have to do that physically and risk, take a risk. And I think the reason the scenes are work, or the reason that there's chemistry, people find it, you want something to be both sexy and vulnerable and truthful and all those things, is because, we're really listening to each other physically. And that requires just a lack of self-consciousness.
Adam plays, by the way, a character who's very disconnected from his childhood parents and home, and moves across town, and as a gay man has just surrendered to a lonely life until a rather adamant person who living in the same apartment complex decides to change that with him. And it's a very endearing movie, and it's he's excellent. And of course, and that's sexy, the sexy priest, what they call him from Fleabag.
Yeah, hot priest.
Hot priest. And
also Moriarty from Sherlock, so he's been on the come up for about a decade now, and I feel like he's starting to get his due. But just starting. I think or at least I hope more awards groups catch on.
I hope so too. Thank you both for joining us. I hope you do well in the predictions, and we're going to welcome now 2 other editors to Gold Derby while we say goodbye and thank you to you. We're going to bring on now. There's our buddy Charlie Bright and David Buchanan. So, have you been? Charlie, you're always, somebody who never holds back. I mean, you bring the shotgun out right away. So, what are you thinking about these Globes tonight?
Well, I will get to that, but first of all, I do have to overrule you on something because Isabelle Huppert was the best of that year. She should have won the Oscar. You run the site. I have a gavel. It's final. After it was so that last year was so interesting because we had, after not having the Globes, it felt like last year was just a reintroduction of why we love the Globes in the first place. And I think personally, for me, nothing exemplified that better. Like you were talking about with, providing alcohol was Mike White's acceptance speech, drunk acceptance speech for the White Lotus, where he just flat out said, I was going to give this speech in Italian, but I'm too drunk because they wouldn't give us food. And I was just like, that's just perfect. And I can't wait for this evening. I'm not sure what to make of the host. I don't know anything about the host. So, I think that actually probably works to his advantage that he's not as well known as, say, Gerard Carmichael was last year. I am really interested to see where is it, because right now from where I'm predicting, I have a lot of group wins. I do have Beef winning the 3 top movie categories. I have The Bear winning the top 3 comedy categories. And I have Oppenheimer winning 4 in the movies, but I only have Barbie only winning 1. So I'm not really sure. So, it's like when you're predicting these, sometimes you try to put together what narrative makes sense. Especially when we're looking at it in the past tense, what will actually make sense of this. And with this amount of these nominations, it feels there's a lot of uncertainty. And and it's part of what makes the Globes fun. And we know that they can very easily throw something completely out of left field. And just, cause all of us to panic and, basically have our heads explode for, at least a couple of minutes.
David, when you look at popular-based awards like the Oscars I was mentioning earlier, which now have 10,000 voters, and you have Lord of the Rings: Fellowship of the Ring winning everything. I mean, I don't think it set a new record, tied the record for the most Oscars. You have the sweep voting, right? The Globes, we're very used to seeing them deliberately not sweeping, handing these things out because they're just so many for the town. They seem to try to take care of everybody. But now that the awards body has grown into the hundreds from 90 something in the past, are we going to see more of a surge toward sweep voting, or are we still going to see the old pattern of isolated winners here? And whichever answer you give, why?
I hope we see more of the old in terms of the exciting wins, like you said. And I feel like with our odds this year, as I've been kind of comparing mine to what a lot of people are predicting, and like Charlie said on the TV side with these sweeps, I feel like it's all feeling a little bit too comfortable, to just predict Beef across the line and Succession and The Bear. I feel like part of what makes the Globe so exciting is that you'll get a winner or two in a night where the contender is ranked 4th or 5th in our odds. Those are the most exciting moments. Picking those, which categories that's going to happen is always the hardest part. So I hope we do see more of that kind of unpredictability. And I do think on the film side, I'm really predicting I'm having a hard time at this moment as we shift kind of out of the critics groups phase of the season into more of the industry and the guilds. I know we're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. This is a nice transitional moment. Like, very interesting to see if we're going to see, Barbie and Oppenheimer. Those are the two in our odds that are, expected to take home the most. I don't have them winning, the 8 that a lot of people think it's going to win. I'm very excited to see, if we get some real upsets and that spreading the wealth, like you were saying, Tom, because that's what makes this show in particular really exciting. And I was thinking about even last year, again, very hard to say, what this new Globes is going to be like compared to, the Hollywood Foreign Press and that small group. But last year, The Fabelmans won the drama film, and it only won drama film and director. Are we going to see something similar with Oppenheimer, where it doesn't win, a drama actor? Maybe it doesn't win drama supporting actor. Does it win the top prize and for Christopher Nolan and maybe for score? And that's it. So very excited to see, how that shakes out. I can't answer one way or the other, Tom. I don't know. It's just so great.
You're whipping out on us here. Well, David, just keep talking. Let's, for example, in our odds, we have the Zone of Interest in last place for Best International Film. That's stupid. If you're on the ground in Hollywood talking with people, Hollywood is in love with that movie. And I think it's something we're underestimating. And I think what we're doing is, in a lot of these films, like Charlie's saying, all of a sudden something pops up here, or was you, David, then all of a sudden we all switch gears and we have these moments where a breakout star emerges. And The Zone of Interest, I think, is a movie that we need to take real seriously based on its buzz. And just sitting in a screening audience, if you wonder at home what it's like for us journalists, it's we're not sitting, in most cases. I saw Killers of the Flower Moon with a mass public audience, but I saw. Let's talk about Naiad, for example, with Annette Bening, who's never won an Oscar. And she's been on the board of governors, and she's been head of the actors branch at the Oscars, and she's beloved across town. I think she's won some Globes. Yeah, she's
won 2.
She won 2, did she? Yeah. But we have an interview with Annette Bening I'd like us to play now, and I think we have her in last place or near to last place at the Globes tonight, and I think we may be underestimating her as an example. So let's lean into this chat we had with Annette.
It's a tremendous responsibility, especially because as I got to know her, I just loved her. She's very lovable, and I think she, as much as she wanted to do the film, and she's very happy with it now, I think it was scary because she knew that it was in our hands. So I think I felt a tremendous responsibility to try to find a way to tell her story that was interesting and entertaining and also truthful. I just love her. She's an incredible woman, and she's a lot of fun. And she's a big person, she is. When she's in the room, it's like, whoa, Diana. She is got stories, and she's curious and just like eats up life. So I felt incredible response. I still do, although I finished the movie, but I still, even talking about it, I feel a responsibility towards Diana.
Do you know, I attended as soon as the SAG strike and the Writers Guild, both of them had settled. The next day, Hollywood rushed out as many films as they could, that they could have the stars be there for Q&As with these Hollywood audiences and voters that they couldn't do during the strike. And so the day the strike was lifted, there was an announcement that there is a screening of Naiad tomorrow night up in the Palisades. Tom, do you want to go? And I went, yeah. And boy, it was so cool to see Annette Bening walk in that room like she owned it, like $1 million. She plays this gal who was a championship swimmer early in her career, and now in her, what is she, 45 or older in this movie, and it's a real life story, decides to be the first person to swim from the United States, from Key West in Florida to Cuba. And this has the most turbulent waters, that in the English Channel, in the world. And you've got the most shark-infested waters, and one of those shark-infested waters in the world. And she refuses to swim inside a cage, which other swimmers have done. And so she drives her best friend, Jodie Foster, who's great in this movie, in a role that you never expect her to play, the kind of cheery best friend who's going to be there for her buddy when she goes on these swims, which entail a huge crew for the boat, etc. Annette does all these physical things in the movie that you can't believe. She's fit and looking fantastic. And what if it could be her year? Remember, everybody in that room knows these people personally. The Hollywood Foreign Press, the stars do special press conferences for them. And if you remember one year, I think it was Desperate Housewives at the Globes at the TV side, Eva Longoria was the only star who didn't do a press conference with the HFPA. So it was the only Desperate Housewife not nominated. These things matter. Their personal connections with them. But this new voter influx, etc., probably dilutes all that. But still, here we have the return of a beloved Hollywood veteran who's out there just knocking it out of the park.
I would agree with that more if the film was getting more of that recognition. It feels like, and it feels like, at least what we're seeing with critics so far, and of course that always can change with this. It feels like, the film is kind of an afterthought, and the only one it seems is really getting that much attention is Jodie Foster. So it just kind of feels like that film is just, it just hasn't resonated. And
it just came out though. I mean, I don't think everybody's seen it.
Well, I mean, it's been out on Netflix for, I think, a month or so.
Oh, has it? Okay.
It's been out for a little while. And, you can tell. And the thing is that there are so many other movies that just really play well in a room. I saw a lot of these movies that are nominated at a film festival with, DC suburbanites around here. And like American Fiction, they ate that movie up. Yes. They adored it.
Talk about that, because again, this is where everything could be derailed. And it's that ending, isn't it, that just blows you away.
I think it's just the tone of the film overall, right from the get-go in that movie, with the interaction that you see Jeffrey Wright have with his writing students. From the get-go, right from there, it sets the mood of everything. And you're watching that, and once that's over, you're either with it or you're done. And everyone in that theater, in the room that I was in, was howling with laughter. They were just going nuts for that movie. And I could very easily see that happening here at the Globes. Barbie is a film I saw that in a regular theater, but that just plays so well in a theater, and it plays so well with that crowd mentality. And I think the Holdovers does actually excels at that as well, and that particularly definitely helps Divine Joy Randolph and Paul Giamatti.
Talk about that, David. Those two films, if you've seen them, both American Fiction and The Holdovers, have that underdog quality that could break loose here, couldn't they? They've generously been nominated.
Yeah, I think Holdovers is going to do really well.
Yeah, that's my number one of the year.
Yeah, I loved it too. And you know what? I think the actors are really going to, I know that it's not the group we're talking about tonight with the Globes, but I do think the actors are really going to carry that film. I don't know if Paul Giamatti can pull off an upset, in Oscars and maybe at SAG and beyond, but he's got a really good chance. And it's funny you asked about those two right now, Tom, because those are the two that are in the running for that comedy actor Globe, Paul and Jeffrey Wright for American Fiction. And I do think it's going to be Paul, but I think that's kind of a coin toss race, and it could really help. I think they're both in, at other awards groups too. I'm wondering how far Paul can go, if he's kind of the kind of sneaking in third place.
And he wins here. He's got the Globe, and he's got Bradley Cooper and Cillian Murphy very nervous, right?
Yeah, I mean, it helps that he's in a different category because he can start that momentum.
That's right. They are right here.
But he could start it exactly. Yeah, he could start the momentum here and then really kind of help shake up the dynamic of the race. But we'll see. We'll see how that shakes out. But those two, either of those would make excellent, Globe winners in actor. Those two films are really extraordinary.
What's interesting with this, and this actually kind of, and this just gets into a history lesson essentially, and you were alluding to this earlier, Tom. With Giamatti with this movie, we remember Giamatti was was surprisingly snubbed at the Oscars for Sideways, which was another Alexander Payne movie, and he lost the Globe obviously to Jamie Foxx for Ray, who was the juggernaut that year. So if he can, win here and then get retribution to get nominated for an Alexander Payne movie at the Oscars this year, that narrative could just be too enticing for some voters.
Right. I once you've all heard me say this many times at our meetings and our chit chats and our drunken brawls through Bohemian LA or New York. I'm just kidding. But the thing that the reason we keep harping on this is how much are the Golden Globes, how much have they been in the past, and how much are they now going to still have this profound impact on the Oscars? And it's not just the Globes. It's where you see a little movie break out at the like Nomadland's my favorite one to use because I'm still mystified in a way by it. I certainly carried the zeitgeist and all of that. But Frances McDormand, says 5 words in the whole movie and she wins the best actress and et cetera, et cetera. So when you start seeing these awards copying each other and all of a sudden come Oscar night, it's like anticlimactic. And you have to say to yourself, we're dealing with awards bestowed by journalists, by actors, by people in the profession, people who have the biggest egos in the world who tell you, us as awardologists, that nobody's going to tell me what to vote for. We're going to set the record straight and blah, blah. We don't go with the tide, but they always do go with the tide. The tide kind of starts at the Film Critic Awards, but they kind of exclude popular films in a way, usually just to show how smart they are. Now we're dealing with hundreds of journalists, foreign journalists here, who may opt the same way, or they might set the new juggernaut off for a movie. And you have to, and I'll finish with this. And I asked one of the two most powerful people behind the scenes who run these campaigns and have for 20, 30 years and have, I remember in the case of this particular one person, when Hustle and Flow came up for broke out at Sundance and nobody wasn't paying attention to it, and she saw it. She said, "Tom, I'm going to put that movie in the awards race and watch me do it." She did, obviously, and she even pulled off at the Oscars a rap song winning Best Song before giving it the top music award before the Grammys ever did for a rap song. So, but when I asked her, why do we have this copycat sweep thing going on all of the time? Once it's taken hold, why can't anything derail the juggernaut except maybe like one of the 4 acting categories at the Oscars? And she said something so profound and so obvious that I felt stupid asking the questions. And she said, "But Tom, they all want to be on the winning team." What do you think, Charlie?
I mean, I think actually, what you were saying actually reminds me of another one. And this is before the Globes expanded their membership. But the Globes was where 1917 and 2019, that's where it really started its serious momentum with Sam Mendes winning director and winning picture. And it really just kept going until the Oscars. I mean, the SAG it was nominated, but it kept on going until the Oscars, and they really went their own way in giving Bong Joon-ho Best Director and giving the film Best Picture. It's just showing, that they're just that even though there is that mentality, sometimes they're just like, we're just going to do our own thing, and we're just going to vote for what we like. It's a bit tougher to gauge. I don't think that the current Globes makeup is all that different in terms of the mentality, because it's about 300 people now. That's not that huge an expansion of the membership. If it was 500 or 600 people, I'd say that might be different. There can still be this more consensus group think, I think, amongst those people. We're still just feeling it out, though.
But then what happens in terms of the impact afterwards with the subsequent? Well, SAG is this week. There's no time for the impact of that award on in sync with the Globes. But there are a lot of other Guild Awards, director, producer, etc., that have impact on the Oscars. David, what do you think about all of this? Is this really the Oscars tonight? Let's just accept the fact that whatever wins is going to go all the way.
Not at all. I mean, I'll go back to the example I gave earlier, just because I was reviewing it, trying to, finalize my picks for tonight because, Fabelmans was on very shaky ground last year.
That movie.
It won the two biggest prizes at the Globes last year. It won drama film and it won director. And that momentum didn't really carry forward into, obviously, it didn't win Oscars. This was its big moment. And it was kind of a make or break moment where it couldn't have done too much better at the Globes. It could have picked up, maybe an acting prize that it didn't or so, but it had a really big night at the Globes and that didn't translate. So, I don't think this is really, we'll see some narratives coming out of tonight. I don't think they're going to be the be all and end all. Which is exciting. I mean, I think there are some films here that maybe can get a win on the map, start getting some points, and then maybe that helps them seem like a more realistic contender moving into other races, maybe in like the screenplay categories. I'm really excited to see, if Celine's Song and Past Lives, which I adored, if that can win screenplay, I know most people are picking Barbie. Let's see if that shakes out that way, or even Poor Things. Maybe some of those wins will help give us some tea leaves and maybe start to see which are the really serious contenders. But I don't think there's anything tonight that's, irreversible or irrevocable, especially as we move into the Guild Awards coming up.
And both of you, I want to hear you, starting with you, Charlie. What are you personally rooting for on the film side? Let's start there.
On the film side, I love that Best Actor in a Drama lineup, but personally, I would love to see Andrew Scott win. He has the most kind eyes I have ever seen on a big screen, and his performance is just heartbreaking. I'll tell you a personal favorite of mine, though. As much as I love Divine Joy Randolph, and I would love if she won.
Yeah,
Rosamund Pike in Saltburn is one of my favorite performances of the year. Every line she delivers is pure comedic gold. And I was just floored. And that was, when I was talking to people after that movie, after talking about all the other obvious stuff, I was just like, Rosamund Pike, she's incredible in this movie. And I love that she got nominated. I would love if she won. I want her to get that Oscar nomination. I know it's a long shot, but God, do I want
that. She's one of those people in Hollywood that they keep saying she's overdue, and the awards.
Yeah, and she pulled that huge upset at the Globes a couple of years ago over eventual Oscar nominee Maria Bakalova when she won for I Care a Lot, and she was as surprised as anybody.
Totally.
David, what say ye?
I mentioned like my two favorites of the night, and I hope they do well. The Holdovers, I think, will do well, and I think Past Lives is probably my favorite film of the one. I have a few left to see, but of everything this year, that's the one that's really stuck with me the most. So I'd love to see, as I said, Celine's Song build some momentum, maybe win screenplay tonight. I know that's maybe a bit of an upset, but her direction in that film was absolutely extraordinary. Those images, some of those. Her shot composition, just absolutely incredible, so moving, and really stuck with me. I've said this, to others, and I said it to Celine when I had the chance to interview her. That was one of the only films in recent memory where the day after I saw it, I had to go back and see it again because it just, it really drew me in so much. I had to go back right away and kind of relive it and experience it. So that would be one, I don't think in our odds it's winning anything tonight. I would love to see it, pull off an upset in screenplay. I know Greta Lee's probably not winning, but her performance is just immaculate. So that's one of my favorites of the year.
What about Poor Things? That's got
I just want to add one other movie, Zone of Interest. I have to also just sat out there. I have not been able to get that movie out of my head since I saw it, and that movie is incredibly haunting. But I think it's one of the most incredible movies I've seen in the last 5 years.
That's what I'm trying to say here. that we've got to pay attention to this stuff, because there are big campaigns. Sure, $300 million is spent every year to win awards that cost less than $500 to make and are merely gold plated. That's proof that Hollywood is crazy. But on the other hand, what these awards do so well, and it's so important, is that there's just way too much TV, way too many films for people in the future to know what should I look at, what's important in this whole sea of entertainment. And these awards are a great filter to say to the future, to this art form that we invented here in the United States. If a comet hits America, the world tomorrow, and we all die, and we look back over the history of mankind, the one thing you can say that America has done and contributed in a positive way to the world, and in a strong negative way in some ways, is that we gave hope for happy endings. And we know that life is a terrible thing. We're all going to end up dead. Sorry, that's just the way it goes. But it's been the role of entertainment, and therefore the entertainment awards, to filter down the best, to find out what is the best. Well, what should we be paying attention to? And the fact that these little movies play a big role and can take off here is so important too. Final thoughts.
David, you go first.
No, I was just going to say, because we haven't talked much about TV. I know Chris on the last segment talked about this too. Really loving, I don't know if either of you are watching it, this 5th season of Fargo is really excellent. I so hope that Juno Temple pulls out an upset for that limited movie actress category. She is absolutely extraordinary. And John Hamm is too. I don't think, and that's the thing, as Charlie said earlier, a lot in the TV, it looks like a few of these shows are going to sweep. And that's not always been the case with Globes. That's a rarity where you get one program winning. We used to love talking about how they would pair, the new series with one acting trophy. And, we would always love to try to pick, what is that new freshman breakout show that's going to win, comedy and comedy actor or so on. But I'm really excited to see what upsets are coming in TV tonight, because I think we're all kind of thinking Succession's going to win the most, and The Bear and Beef are just going to take it away. And I'm living for, what those surprises might be. So I'm hoping Juno Temple is one of them.
I am, I'm like on the same page as you there, David, because last night I switched from Sarah Snook to Kerry Russell.
Wow.
Actor. There's someone else who put that thought in my brain, and I'm going to blame him if it doesn't end up panning out. And I'm also, just so you know, I'm predicting Past Lives in foreign language film.
Oh, great.
Yeah. But I'm just excited for this. It's going to be fun. And I can't wait to see which category is going to make me throw something on my TV and finally get me the excuse to buy a new one.
Well, thank you for these great insights. We didn't spend enough time talking about Poor Things. That is going to be a huge factor, narrative, possible surprise. Contender. Again, one of these small films that's just a standout. But let's tell everybody, stay on the homepage of Gold Derby. We are airing the Golden Globe ceremony live in just a few minutes. So hurry up, go to the bathroom, get your drink, whatever it is, and settle down in front of Gold Derby and watch the Golden Globes with us. Meantime, thanks for watching this. Good luck with your predictions.